Well, I'm Josina Anderson, standing alongside NFL Nation Bills reporter Mike Rodak, and it's been interesting here at the Bills facility today. We heard Bills running back Fred Jackson talk about the fact that he's welcomed LeSean McCoy here, obviously a new guy that's going to be in that offense, but he also said he doesn't really know what his role is going to be, and he's not just going to automatically hand it to LeSean McCoy, and matter of fact, wants to push him. So how do you envision that working, especially with your experience having seen Fred Jackson and CJ Spiller work together last year?
Well, Rex Ryan said that he wants McCoy to be the, quote, bell cow of this offense. But Fred said, I'm going to push him on that one. I'm not going to just let that happen. So seeing what CJ and Fred did last year was close to a 50-50 split. Obviously, there's injuries on both sides that affected that. But I think this is more of a 70 or even 80% workload for LeSean McCoy. They went out and they got this guy for a pretty high price in Kiko Alonso and gave him a big deal. So really having Fred Jackson in an equal role with McCoy just doesn't make sense at this point in the game. So I think Fred will still have a role maybe on third downs. He's an excellent guy in blitz pickup, but this is still LeSean McCoy's backfield.
I think it's interesting because LeSean McCoy is coming from averaging over 300 carries in each of the last two seasons with the Eagles, but a source had talked to me about the fact that last year used to maybe about 5 or 6 running plays, and this Bills offense maybe they'll have about 40. So definitely a transition there. But moving along on the defensive side, Rex Ryan, defensive end Jerry Hughes, having no problem saying they want to have the #1 defense in the entire NFL after finishing 4th. Your thoughts on that happening and what areas they can actually improve on, if possible, from what you saw last year?
Well, there's no doubt that they have the potential to do that across the entire defensive roster. And so I think you look at what they need to do to become that #1 defense, having a shutdown corner would be a great way to do that. And obviously, Darrelle Revis helped bring the Jets basically to that spot in Rex's early years in New York. So I talked to defensive backs coach Tim McDonald here on Monday, and he thought that Stephon Gilmore could be the Darrelle Revis. He could be the guy that brings you down to a 10-on-10 game and takes that wide receiver out. So that would be one area. And also, you look back at Mike Pettine's defense 2 years ago. Bills players kind of conflicted on whether it's exactly the same defense or something similar, but that Mike Pettin defense had trouble against the run. So if they can shore up that run defense with this similar scheme from Rex, then yeah, I think they have all the potential to be a #1 defense.
Well, don't have any room to improve in sacks since they finished #1 in sacks last year. But speaking of sacks, that's something that Rex Ryan knows about, as he is a defensive guru. So I'm curious, what impact do you think he can really have on making a difference on this team?
Well, he's obviously made a difference in the community. I think people and fans here have really bought into what he's been saying, but they're not going to win games because of that. They're not going to lose games either. So he still needs to prove that while, yes, he can be a great defensive coach, and he can keep his offense really up to speed and keep that quarterback position from being the limiting factor that it was for the Bills the last couple of seasons. So he still has something to prove on that end, but they're well along in their process of getting this team where it needs to be.
Well, it helps when you add to Sammy Watkins, Percy Harvin, and tight end Charles Clay. That certainly helps to take the top off of the defense, and not to forget, of course, Mr. Shady McCoy. So for Mike Rodak, I'm Josina Anderson.